What's going on, guys? I promise I'll do another video. Like, comment, subscribe to the Ignorant channel. That's what it's all about. Sorry, a little bit of car play here, but just my thoughts regarding the aftermath of UFC 293, because it was a crazy story behind it. No one picked Sean Strickland to win beside probably a few teammates and all that stuff. But with going with that, we're going to talk about the next contender, Dricus, because I think it has been talked about how weird the situation was with Dricus du Plessis, right? Which is a South African champ. He beat Robert Whittaker in a dominant fashion. And so Israel started spewing out some African craziness, talking about he manifested this fight to happen because the middleweight needed more contenders, right? So Israel Adesanya started drinking a little bit, eating his own chomps and going crazy and out in the crowd while I was waiting to do the face-off after du Plessis beat Robert Whittaker, which, if you don't know Robert Whittaker, he's a top contender. He was a middleweight champ for a while, but Israel Adesanya dethroned him twice. The second fight was very close. But anyways, everyone was picking Robert Whittaker to beat du Plessis just because of his striking. He still has grappling ability. But no one talked about how good du Plessis was, man. Pretty much he bulldogged through Robert Whittaker, and then he dropped him with a jab in the second round and finished the fight. I think after that aftermath, Israel Adesanya didn't realize how good du Plessis was. And so, the whole thing about du Plessis was Israel Adesanya thought it was going to be a war, right? We'll get into a whole story here. It's so crazy. So Israel Adesanya assumed it was going to be a war. It's going to be crazy. But the fact that du Plessis beat him so easily, Israel Adesanya's eyes were wide open. The fact that this dude is a threat. And so they get into the cage afterwards, and then Israel Adesanya calls him the N-word multiple times. And then he says, "You're gonna feel me. Because du Plessis, which is a backstory, claimed that he resides in Africa, which he does. So he feels like he's a true African fighter, where Israel does not reside in Africa at the moment. So he says that he was more African than he is. So that really, as you can see, like even Sean Strickland mentioned, him as a Chinese champion, that it gets under Israel Adesanya's skin. So the fact that du Plessis mentions him as being an African, I feel like that's what triggers him the most. And I think that gives him some type of Israel Adesanya some type of PTSD. Anytime someone tells him he's not truly where he's from or where he thinks he is. And so he starts getting angry. You start noticing the sequences now where Sean Strickland questioned where he's from, du Plessis questioned where he's from, and he gets just frustrated. And you can tell after UFC, during UFC 293, the fight with Sean Strickland, he was upset and angry. He didn't say much, but you can just tell he was just angry, dude. He was super angry. Like, he can't believe he's being questioned. So, man, we're going to get more into this detail. It's crazy. So, Israel Adesanya right now was upset about the whole thing, had some interviews about after what happened after the face-off with du Plessis. And he was pretty much like, yeah, I wasn't drunk, but, I just felt the moment, blah, blah, blah. So, it was just weird. It's a weird duel between the two, just because du Plessis says he was more African, that really bothered him a lot. Take what you will. And then he also mentioned that, Israel Adesanya mentioned that if you take a you and me DNA test, it'll tell me where he's from. But if he takes one, it's not where he thinks it's at. So You know where he's going with that, right? You know where he's going with that. I don't need to explain any further. All right. So that's the whole aftermath there. Now, after the fight, it was scheduled for them to fight actually at UFC 293 in September. Now, this fight happened, in July, I believe? It happened in July. So he just beat Robert Whittaker in July. Dana White's trying to schedule UFC 293 with Duplessis versus Israel Adesanya 2 months. 2 months notice. Now, we had to sit back and question, okay, why is it a short notice like this, right? Now, there's two arguments that, hey, it's a championship fight, you take it. But also, there's an argument that, it's too short of a notice, and Dana White has no regards to his fighters. So let's digest that, right? Okay. So let's think here, right? Let's think about this. What could be the cause of why they rushed the fight? Right? What could actually be the cause why they rushed the fight? Could it be that they're not paying their employees? Is that one side of it? Could be. Like, there isn't much. Have you noticed these main cards? If you're a UFC fan, the main cards are pretty good, but there hasn't been really a stacked card this year. A crazy stacked card. It's always been just a few of the main, like two of the headliners, and it's been slow. You know, the rest of the card is just kind of like lackluster, not too crazy. So then you got to question, like, okay, so what's going on here, right? You got to be like, something is off. Something is really off about that. Not a lot of people on the main cards that are good names, household names. So could it be that they were determined, the UFC was determined to, you know, can it be that the UFC was determined to just, you know, headline the Australia card just so that, just because there's not a lot of people that were trying to get on there or couldn't make it happen? Very possible. So that's one option. So that first option is what? Either they're not paying their employees enough, and so they needed main stars now. They're kind of just scrambling for main stars to fight. Very possible, bro. Very possible. Okay. Very possible. Very, 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 very possible. Very possible. The second option could be that they signed a huge deal with Israel Adesanya, right? And so he's the main star. So they got to make profit off of him. They had a deal with Australia, the arena in Australia, so they needed big stars. So it has to be Israel Adesanya because that's where he resided at, right? So they're like, okay, so we need to make this happen. Israel Adesanya should be ready. But you had other contenders which they could have made, but none of them fell through, which is kind of weird. I originally thought it was going to be maybe at 205 instead of 185, just so that make a light heavyweight champion bout, which will add stock to Israel Adesanya's name. Well, that didn't fall through. What other options you have? You probably could have made Khamzat versus Israel Adesanya. That didn't go through. Instead, it was Costa versus Khamzat, which is coming up at UFC 294. So you had all these other options. You had all these other options for Israel to fight, but it never happened. They could have, matter of fact, they could have made Duplessis. They could have made Duplessis first before he fought Robert Whittaker. If they wanted to do that fight, they could have made Duplessis versus Israel Adesanya. That would have sold already before he fought Robert Whittaker. But I think Duplessis said that he wanted to fight contenders, which that's real right there. That's cool. He beat Robert Whittaker. He gambled, beat Robert Whittaker, and so he should be set up to fight next for the title. But that's not how the UFC works. So I think number 2 option sounds more like it because they invested so much in Israel Adesanya that they wanted him to fight on their card. But no other fights fell through. Now, that could be a combination of money. Maybe they didn't pay enough money where people were excited to fight. There was some injuries and stuff too, but who knows? But that's how they made the Sean Strickland fight. Sean Strickland beat Abus, whatever his name is, and then had a short notice fight, and then fought Israel Adesanya. And look how it turned out. Israel Adesanya is no longer the champ. But the main thing I'm trying to get at, man, is they did Duplessis kind of wrong because he fought Robert Whittaker, a true contender, but they didn't give him enough time to fight. My question is, why didn't they just switch it? I mean, maybe they couldn't do that. It's too hard. They already had it locked in. But what if they could have just switched the dates or pushed it back in Australia? You know what I mean? To make Marcus Duplessis versus Israel Adesanya. He just needed a little bit more time. A little bit more time. Which I think is warranted because, dude, he just fought Robert Whittaker, one of the best middleweights out there. But Dana White is rushing. And then the fact that Duplessis decides not to take the fight, Dana White's more frustrated. But it's a short notice, and he was injured. Then you have people like Shevchenko coming out in this video talking about, oh my God, I didn't see him walk with a limp. Like, what are you talking about, dude? Like, Shevchenko, what are you talking about? You question someone's injury? And you know Shevchenko is a company, man, so obviously this narrative kind of makes sense of why Shevchenko is pushing this. Dana White's upset. Now the third option, which kind of goes in between them, but a little bit irrelevant. But maybe Dana White was more upset that he didn't take the fight because he liked the fact that that Israel Adesanya and Dricus had beef about who's a real African, and maybe Dana White was like, "Ooh, we got to make this fight," and it will probably sell tickets because it's in Australia where Israel Adesanya resided in. And there's some beef and blood, so this is the best fight to make. That could be it. Like, it can be one of those 3 options, man, where they needed a superstar in Australia and a good fight. Duplessis versus Israel Adesanya actually sounds pretty good. And Duplessis has some K1 background as well, even though it has a more forward, aggressive style. I think it's better grappling. Probably not as diverse or striking as Israel Adesanya, but I think Duplessis has good, solid fundamental striking, but mainly his ground game is crazy. He has crazy strength. And then now people are making the analysts that if Dricus fought Israel Adesanya that night, that Dricus would have won, and most likely so, because Dricus has good pressure. Now you see versus Whittaker, he has a crazy good jab. I mean, absolutely, man. I think that Dricus could have won versus Israel Adesanya at UFC 293, but he was injured, man. So do him justice and get him this title fight because he deserves it. He fought Robert Whittaker and beat him. Who else has done that besides Israel Adesanya? That's what I'm saying. Like, give him a title shot. And then the interesting situation now, let's talk about that and link these together, is that Dana White did not expect Israel Adesanya to lose a fight, especially in that fashion. It was probably best, honestly, if Israel Adesanya got knocked out to just say, oh, rematch, things happen, got caught. But he got dropped versus Sean Strickland and beat for 5 rounds. So now, Dana White has a press conference changing his tune, talking about, we should probably make the rematch. I mean, we have different options that we might not even do the rematch. We have different options, possibly. Because, dude, at the same time, Dana White, as a businessman, needs to not be emotional. And here's why I say this. He almost burned bridges with his fighters just because one of his superstars don't don't do well. It's like, dude, you need multiple options, because this is why. He better burn bridges with all his fighters, because either they don't accept deals or whatever the situation is. But it's like, okay, well, if your superstar loses because you're arrogant thinking you're on top, I mean, that's how the CEO, these bosses think. They think, okay, well, if I'm on top, I'm going to be arrogant and all good. Everything's all good. I'm going to treat these people like low-pay employees. Well, didn't expect Israel Adesanya to lose, his superstar, his cash cow, to lose. So now he's changing his tune. So probably giving Dracus a fight now. But at first he didn't want to give Dracus a fight because he was like, well, he should accept the fight. Don't ever mix emotion with business, dude. This is why you don't ever do that. Because now, what if Dracus be like, dude, you know what? Screw this, screw this fighting crap. Like, screw fighting for the title. You need another title. And Israel Adesanya might be out for a little bit. Who else is there? Exactly. You can't burn your bridges. Dana White burns his bridges because he thinks emotional at the time. He's mad. He's like, well, the money got messed up. Well, yeah, dude, he got injured at the same time. So is it fair for him to have an opportunity to where he was injured or bad and then screw up the his title shot because he wasn't to the best of his abilities, or at least give him an opportunity to be the best to his ability? You can't just throw an injured dude out there like that. Especially, it's different if you're just injured, because most fighters deal with injuries. But 2 months after Dricus beats Robert Whittaker, after a fight that he just accepted. That's just crazy to me, right? Dana White is on some strange things, man. And then, I mean, you could also talk about the Alex Pereira fight where, look, if they wanted a fight, they should do it on a rematch in Australia. Alex Pereira versus Israel Adesanya, UFC 293. I'm sure Alex Pereira would accept the fight. I'm sure of it. That would have been a good seller. A rematch in Australia. But Israel Adesanya said no to that one, but he don't choose fights. Usually he's not scared of the challenge, but he didn't want to fight Alex Pereira again. I wonder why, which is crazy. So Dana White oddly announces him to go to 205. That's just weird. Protecting his cash cow. That's what Dana White's doing. If that's right or wrong, I mean, I don't know. From a business standpoint, it's like, yeah, it's right to protect him, but it's like, you're going all out of order, and you're thinking too emotionally because of it. Crazy. Man, let me know your thoughts, though. I mean, what's next? What's going to happen? Because now it's like, Israel Adesanya is broken. He might be out for a while. Sean Strickland versus who? That's who's next. We don't know. Man, like, comment, subscribe to this ignorant channel. Like I said, that's my insight. Let me know what you think, because, dude, that's what I'm saying. Like, this is wild. Dana White needs to just lock his mouth sometimes, because he just disrespects his fighters, dude. The people that work for the company that put on these exciting fights. He needs to stop disrespecting his fighters, man. I don't know what's all this disrespect all about, but when someone's injured, have some respect, dude. Have some respect for your fighters. The people that put on a show and put their lives on the line. Have some respect. I'm sick of these CEOs like that, like Dana White, the UFC, who are just arrogant-minded, bro. They're just arrogant-minded. They don't think about anybody but themselves. And then if Dricus would have lost, they wouldn't give him no favors. It's just weird. It's like they just want Israel Adesanya to win all his fights, make him disadvantaged as most as possible because he's a cash cow. He's like, okay, now you fought the good in the division. you're gonna start fighting the weakened division because we need you to make it. We don't need you losing fights because you're the cover of UFC 5, and we have this big deal with Australia. You need to make sure you win your fights because you can tell, dude, during the press conference of Israel Adesanya versus Sean Strickland, Dana White was not happy that Sean Strickland won. He was making all kind of excuses for Israel Adesanya. He was confused, couldn't believe that a basic striker like Sean Strickland, but has his good fundamentals, his 1-2s, was able to dethrone such a diverse striker named Israel Adesanya. He was so confused, and it just mind-boggled because he couldn't understand how his cash cow, who worked so hard, could still have lost. Who begged and promised him he's going to beat Sean Strickland, didn't do it. Whoever thought it was going to happen, I didn't have the most confidence in the world of Sean Strickland, but dude, this is still a thing because even as 2 weeks passed, it's such craziness that Sean Strickland's a champ and how he fumbled the whole division. The whole division shuffled right now. Dana White is panicking because he's like, look, we need a for sure superstar. We can't have a bunch of people just keep fumbling the belt. We need a superstar to be on these covers and to make money. Who's going to be the consecutive winner? Well, Israel Adesanya is not a consecutive winner because he just got his belt back and then lost it again. Devastating. So you have to understand how devastating Israel Adesanya is. This dude ain't been on social media for a while. Besides posting a few things on Instagram, this dude is off the grids right now. There's nothing he could say. There's no injury. There's none of that stuff. And these media members who love Sean Strickland, that loves Israel Adesanya, they were making excuses for him because he ain't said nothing yet. There's no excuses that he had. So yeah. Man, like, comment, subscribe to this channel. Let me know your thoughts. I appreciate you guys to listening to my thoughts. It's just crazy world. I'm about to drop another video on Valentina, Shevchenko versus Alex Grasso in the aftermath because that was crazy. That was a crazy move, and I'm gonna talk about some things that I saw that a lot of people are not talking about as well. Because Valentina, I'm gonna write that down to make sure to do a video either today or tomorrow on it. But yeah, like, comment, subscribe. Yeah.